Stephanie, I'm going to warn you, people are going to begin, and I don't want to set people off. I shouldn't give them this idea, but people are going to begin to dial up and the phone number, and then they're going to hang up on you.
Okay.
And just don't, it's not that they're being creepy.
Okay.
They're locking in their redial for 7:35.
Oh, thank you for the warning.
Okay,
right,
so
yes.
don't think that it's like, oh, there's some creep out there that's
well, you don't know.
hanging up on me.
I embraced the creeps when I was in there.
When I was just a kid, and Tom, you may remember this, there was a radio station called Wally, W-A-L-Y, and they'd give away like a McDonald's Big Mac, and I'd sit there, and there was no redial back then. and it was rotary dial, and we were on a party line, and the other family that was on the party line was also trying to win the contest. So we would never get the call out to the radio station because we'd end up arguing and trying to dial, because if somebody picks up while you're dialing, it won't go through.
A lot of times it's always
Right?
busy.
Do you remember that?
The phone calls are always busy, and you have to keep redialing.
You'd have to keep redialing, but you couldn't. But you'd have to literally redial the rotary thing.
Carrier pigeon number 10 into the studio gets the Big Mac.
So that was
Of course,
kind of
we're dating ourselves with that.
We are just a little bit. My daughter came in, and we had gotten one of the old phones, and I put it out like kind of a little display thing, but it worked. I had it working, set up in the house, and my daughter was like, "What is that? That is the coolest thing." Not really. That's what we said when the touchtone came out. It's like, wow, that is really cool. All right, Tom, sorry to date us here a little bit.
No problem.
So you're a private investigator, so talk about what it is that you do, and then I want to get to this case specifically.
Well, I must probably have to plug that I'm New York State licensed.
Mm-hmm.
But mainly I work on criminal cases. A lot of it has to do with homicides or robberies, burglaries, rapes, cases like that.
Do you find that listen, our system is the best? I believe it's the best in the world. And
there's flaws.
But there are flaws.
Yes.
And we see it. We see it in this case with this kid out in Wisconsin, right, Andrew? I mean,
yeah. Making a murderer. And this guy, Stephen Avery, not only is he the possibility of a bad trial for the murder charge, but before that he was wrongly convicted originally.
Yeah, it's a crazy story.
And
there's a new version of this
assault
coming out on Netflix. So it happens. We know that Stephen Barnes' case here was a big one. He went away. I mean, a huge chunk of his life was
That was
really
more or less based on DNA.
DNA.
Yes.
And now in this case, let's talk about this specific case here, because no DNA on this case at all.
No.
And this guy was charged with what? Give us the background on the case.
He was charged for
not just charged, but convicted.
Convicted.
Yeah.
For 4 counts of sexual act, first degree. I think this is Class B felony. And 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a child.
Okay.
And he was convicted 13 years out of Oswego County. And
so he spent 13 years in jail.
Well, he was.
Oh, the sentence was 13 years.
Sentenced for 13. He was in about 4.
Okay.
And basically, there was an appeal, and it was denied. But they had one of the judges, I think they call it dissenting decision, where he disagreed with the other judges. And in his decision, he stated that he felt that the accuser was not credible. And the whole case was based on
one witness, right? That accuser. It was like his word versus
no physical evidence.
No physical evidence.
So I was hired to I was working on another case in Oswego County, and that person was in Attica, and he referred this other guy that was Skippy Wilson, that was in Attica, and he had his mother call me, and I said, well, I don't work, I work through an attorney, so you have to get an attorney to call me, and he called me, and I went out and investigated the case.
Is that how you get all your cases? Is that either family members or attorneys will contact you and have you do the investigating that maybe they feel the police force isn't?
Yes, because a lot of times I've always hired through an attorney, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is you keep the attorney-client privilege information for the person you're working for, and another thing is there's times where I find out evidence that doesn't help your client, and they kind of get upset with that. So the attorney could be the buffer. See,
for an attorney, it's really interesting, and I tell the story all the time because wherever we've dealt in the court system, many people have, and family court is a place where I certainly spent a lot of time, and it's interesting to watch the attorneys because it's work for them. It's business, and the emotional. Usually, they don't have the emotional connection, and it's hard for the client to be able to say, "Wow, my attorney and their attorney, they're all out laughing and joking. How are they?" But it isn't. There's no emotional attachment. So for somebody like you to be able to work with the attorney as opposed to the family, there's a great benefit.
Well,
for
a lot of times when you refer to that is, I've worked on, unfortunately, about 30 homicide cases. And I do tend to like to go out and speak to victims, the victims' family members or friends, with the impression they may not want to talk to me.
Right.
But I always want to talk to them and get a feel of what the victim was like or who the person was. And that helps a lot in the case.
Yeah. But your report goes back to the attorney.
Yes.
Which makes it's more of a professional.
It's more
it erases the
attorney-client.
emotional aspect of it, and it's attorney-client privilege and whatever they want to use.
It's interesting you bring that up because we were talking about that Stephen Avery case, and one of the things with Brendan Dassey, who was the nephew of Stephen Avery, was the big issue of his first attorney, his first public defender, had that private investigator. And you talk about how sometimes you find evidence that doesn't help the attorney that hired you.
Right.
In the Stephen Avery case.
In this case, the guy's defense attorney was and the private eye were brought in and were colluding with the prosecution to get the kid to
coerce the confession.
To confess, and that was certainly the kid had no defender. Yet he still went to prison. It's the craziest thing in the world. But in this case, this guy goes to jail and goes to prison, Attica of all places, and he's been convicted of molesting and sexual activity with an underage child.
Yeah.
He's going to spend 13 years in one of the tough prisons in New York.
Ironically, I never, with this case being vacated, I never proved or disproved that the sexual acts occurred. What I disproved or found was the credibility issues of the accuser.
Got it.
And it was based on documentation evidence. And so, which is my concern with that a little bit is that documentation evidence was out there initially when the police investigated the case. So if they had found this documentation evidence, they may have brought the accuser back in. And
do you think there was any suppression of evidence?
No suppression. It was lack of.
They just didn't do the investigation and get it. Now, first thing we're thinking is, listen, one of the worst things that can be done, in my opinion, is the molestation of a child. It destroys that kid's life. And whether it's a boy or a girl, it's just a terrible thing. So it's easy for us as the public to look and say, well, sometimes we get it wrong, but most times we get it right. But in fact, in America, we're innocent until proven guilty. There's a pretty important part there.
I agree.
And to say, in this case, it was just one witness, no other evidence, right? It was basically a he said, she said.
That's right. That's it. And what's unique, I think, and I commend the Oswego County DA's office, is they had found something a little bit into this while I was working on the case, and they asked the defense attorney that I was working for if they could talk to me. So I met with one of the ADAs and an investigator, and we sat for about an hour or so, and I gave them all the stuff that I found, and they just sent a letter to the judge and said, please, we're not going to fight this case if it goes to a 440 hearing. We just want to, go ahead and vacate the conviction.
Is there any part of you that wonders, it's still possible, I guess, because you say you did not disprove the sexual activity.
Well, I've been doing this for 35 years.
Yeah.
And I've always gone home, any case I work on, whether the client did it, when I was a police officer, did I have enough evidence to charge this guy or this person? I've always think that.
The question, though,
it's normal, though.
But I think the question comes, and this is what we saw in the case of the Stephen Avery case and his nephew, is it seems they didn't have the evidence, but they knew he did it. Now that's dangerous, right?
Yes.
And so they did everything they could to convince that jury that he did it because they knew it. They just knew in their hearts that he did it. Again, dangerous. It really should be based on evidence.
Well,
here.
a good example of flaw in the system, I think, is the Danny Lackey case in Madison County in 2005. I got that vacated. He was in for 3 years and was sentenced for 9. And the flaw I saw with that was the Post-Standard did a huge article on that, and they spoke to interview some of the jurors.
Yeah.
And one of the jurors said, I had doubts about this conviction. And to me, why would you vote to convict if you had doubts?
Peer pressure.
And it's peer pressure from the other jurors,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And that's where you see the sometimes the flaws. You know?
Well, and the terrible part is you look at, somebody who's in prison for a sexual crime, that 4 years may seem like an eternity because of how...
I can never envision being in prison, so I don't understand how these people...
Right.
But
just
First of all, it's 4 years of it, whether it's a day of your life or it's 4 years
Yeah.
of your life, or in some cases much longer. It.
I guess what my point is, I don't have an understanding to that.
Right, it's hard to
So,
understand. Yeah. It's very difficult to think about what, and there, once you get in, you really now have nowhere to turn. And do you find that some of these cases, though, in the case of Making a Murder on Netflix, this is a poor family, uneducated, not beautiful people. When you look at them, you can see, boy, you look guilty. Do you find in the cases that plays a role?
Well,
especially with a jury, at the end of the day, when you look at somebody, we judge. We're a judging species. We judge.
I guess that part I don't understand much because I'm out dealing with the people that have issues, criminal issues. A lot of times the witnesses that you're trying to find have criminal issues but as far as I have heard that like juries look at a person if they're smiling at the defendant's smiling or he's dressed, the way they don't think the way he's dressed.
Well, it's how we judge the presidential debate. If you like Donald Trump, then you will accept his the visual that you get. If you don't like him, you're going to have a problem with he's never smiling. You ever notice Donald Trump doesn't really smile ever? Now, on the other hand, if you hate Hillary Clinton, you're going to look at her and like that smile that she has is disgusting. You're bothered by it. It's not a smile, it's a smirk. And we just judge, and we judge by the visual. And a jury does that. Which is why your attorney will say, when you do this, don't laugh, don't smile, but don't look upset, don't look angry, and please come dressed properly. It's all of these things that we want to say it doesn't play a role, but we know it really does.
Yeah. Well, the 3 cases that I've overturned based on new evidence, I never blamed the prosecution for like malicious prosecution or anything like that, because I think they prosecute the best that they had at the time,
right?
And they don't have that information that I may have found,
right?
At the time. And
I just want to ask you this about when you go back and question witnesses from the original case. Do you believe that they are more apt to share information with you as a private investigator or be more cooperative in that role?
At times.
Okay.
Mainly.
Sometimes they might not want to talk to you.
Yes. Yes. Well, I always go to a person's house or apartment, to talk to a witness, always with the impression that they're going to tell me to eat dirt. Or get off my porch, get off my...
Right.
But I get surprised even when I talk to alleged victims. They let me in the house, they talk to me, because a lot of times they don't even hear from the DA's office for 5-6 months.
Right.
And they kind of want an update, and I kind of give it to them where the case is going and when the trial is, because they don't hear from the DA's office.
What's your success rate, by the way? Do you keep track?
Well, no, I don't. But I think the problem I have sometimes with law enforcement people and prosecutors is they think I'm out there to overturn cases, and basically I'm out there to find either evidence that helps the client or evidence that doesn't help the client.
Right.
And I have found evidence that didn't help the client that hurt him more than the police had found.
Right. You're gonna go out independently and find what is out there.
Yes.
And you're searching for. I don't want to necessarily say the truth, but you're searching for the truth. But what you find could be very something very important legally, a part of the legal system.
Well, I've been up front with attorneys, and there's times where I say, I found this evidence, and I think you ought to look into like a plea deal, or it's not, going to help the client.
Got it.
What I found.
Right. Good for you.
So
you have a conscience.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff.
Being on the show.
I appreciate it.
That's part of my bucket list to be on your show.
It is.
Yes.
We went to school together.
Yes.
So he did well, and I ended up here. So that's how it goes. You're actually doing things, accomplishing things, and
you too. You're putting it on the air.
Well,
so.
we're trying anyway. So I wanted to add one other thing, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has to be tough because the victims' families really are rest at ease when they finally say, okay, we've got the guy. And when you uncover evidence that might say, hey, this might not be the guy, or based on legalities, it's not the guy or the woman. Sometimes it can be tough.
There was a couple cases where I found that this other person had done the crime other than the person they charged or convicted.
And that,
so
I'm
that
sure,
helps
is
too. I mean,
the best case scenario is when not only do you find the guy who didn't do it, but you find who did.
Yes.
That's
and then,
really big.
A good example is the Danny Griswold case out of Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
And we found him, and he confessed to, he was in for 9 years, facing 20 for attempted murder. And he got out of, he was in Utica too. So.
Wow. Good stuff. You're doing great work here.
Just a quick question. Sure. Based on the number of cases, I don't know if you know exactly how many cases, how many of them do you think were wrongful, where the defendant was wrongfully convicted? Would you say it happens a lot? Is it 1 out of 5, 1 out of 100? Somewhere in
there? The problem
there?
is you're being brought in on a case that people are really suspecting they're wrongfully convicted, so the percentages would change for you.
Not all the time.
That's a good point.
Not all the time. I mean, I get cases, they're pending criminal cases, and the attorneys hire me to go out to find whether there's damaging evidence against the client, or something that can help the case, and that helps them a lot to either take a plea deal, not to go to trial.
So do you have a number on his question?
I know you've mentioned 2 cases so far where an individual was wrongfully convicted. I believe
there's 3, but.
That you've worked on in your career, or just 3 that we've mentioned this morning?
There's 3 I've worked on that they were overturned.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Based on new evidence.
Interesting. All in the Syracuse area?
And then the 4th one was an acquittal on a homicide case.
Okay.
And
so in 4 cases, you really you saved somebody's life.
Yes, but the thing is, unfortunately, I've worked on I'm going to say around 30 homicide-related cases, and there's times where you find information that the client may have done it. So, I think the percentage is low.
Got it. But even a low percentage, we don't want to ever see anybody going to jail that doesn't deserve to go to jail.
But I think a lot has to do with the prosecution doing the best they can to prosecute the case and not maliciously do it.
Right.
And so when you first meet a client,
I got a break, Andrew.
Okay.
But how do people get in touch with you? They have to go through their attorneys and the name of your business and all of that.
You can call personally, and then I tell you on the phone to contact an attorney and have them call me.
Okay, so how would they contact you?
My phone number is 866-8039.
Local guy doing big things throughout the region. So, Tom, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
And the name of your firm is?
It's TW Private Investigation.
Okay.
It's my initials, so I don't forget the name.
Very good.
Helps a lot.
Helps me remember, too. I should have remembered. Darn it.